All right, welcome everyone. Today we're diving into a really big topic, one that's absolutely crucial for anyone working with the new ISSA 5000 standard. We're talking about materiality in sustainability assurance.
So, why does materiality feel so different here? If you come from a traditional financial audit background, this can feel a little, well, squishy. And there's a good reason for that. Your standard numbers based materiality just doesn't quite fit the sustainability world. I mean, you're juggling hard data, sure, but also narratives, future projections, and a whole spectrum of topics. It's a different beast entirely. And to handle all that complexity, the IASSB, well, they didn't just put a fresh coat of paint on the old rules. No way. They built something from the ground up, a brand new tailored framework right inside ESSA 5000. And honestly, it's something we all really need to get our heads around.
All right, here's what we're going to cover. First, we'll talk about why materiality is such a challenge here. Then, we'll separate out what the entity does versus what we do as practitioners. We'll dive into this new bifurcated approach, then tackle double materiality, and finish up with what this all means for your day-to-day practice. Let's get to it.
Okay, first things first. We absolutely have to draw a clear line in the sand between two different roles. ISS 5000 is super clear about this. What the entity does is one thing, and what we do, as the assurance practitioners, well, that's another process entirely.
This slide really breaks it down nicely. Think of it as two lanes on a highway. In the left lane, you've got the entity, management. Their job is to figure out what sustainability information to report based on user needs and whatever framework they're using. But over in our lane, the practitioner's lane, our job is different. We take what they've reported, and our focus is all about planning the engagement and figuring out if that information is free from material misstatement. So put simply, they decide what to report, and we provide assurance on how well it's been reported. Now, to make sure nobody gets these two things mixed up, the ISB did something really smart. They came up with this very specific new term. And if you look closely, you'll see a key word is missing, materiality. That was completely on purpose. They wanted to draw a hard line between the entity's process of identifying what to report and our process of determining materiality for the engagement itself. It's a subtle but really important distinction.
Okay, so with that distinction in mind, let's look at how this all feeds into the new methodology we're going to be using. And this right here is where things start to look really different from a traditional financial audit. ISSA 5000 brings in something called the bifurcated approach. Let's break that down.
So the first half of this approach deals with the stuff we're most comfortable with, the numbers, right? We're talking about your quantitative disclosures, things you can count, like metric tons of CO2 emissions, employee turnover percentages, water usage, you name it. For these, the standard is pretty straightforward. You have to determine a clear, definitive materiality threshold. But then there's the other half, and this is where it gets interesting. We're talking about all that qualitative information, the narratives and descriptions that make up a huge chunk of any sustainability report. Think about the company's climate strategy, its human rights policies, or descriptions of its biggest risks. Here, the approach has to be different. It leans much, much more on our professional judgment. And here you can see the two paths side by side. It really is like a fork in the road. For the quantitative stuff, the numbers, we determine materiality. That feels familiar, right? Just like a financial audit, we're setting clear benchmarks. But for the qualitative stuff, the narratives, the word is consider. And this is key. The IASB gets it. It's just not practical or even possible to slap a single number on a complex narrative about, say, a company's ethics policy. So the standard explicitly builds in room for our professional judgment. All right. Let's shift gears and talk about a concept you're probably hearing a lot about, especially with frameworks like the ESRS in Europe. We're talking about double materiality. And you'll see in a second how this plugs directly into that bifurcated approach we just discussed. So, what exactly is double materiality? You can think of it as needing to look through two different lenses at the same time. The first lens is financial materiality. This is the one we know well. It's looking at how sustainability issues out there in the world could impact the company's bottom line, the classic outside-in view. But then there's the second lens, impact materiality, and this one flips the script. It looks at how the company's own actions impact the environment and society. It's the inside-out view. You need both to get the full picture. And here's the kicker. This isn't some nice-to-have idea. It's a requirement. ISSA 5000 is crystal clear on this. This quote here from the Basis for Conclusions says it all.
If the framework the company is using, like the ESRS, requires them to use double materiality, then we, as practitioners, have to take both of those perspectives into account when we determine or consider materiality. It's not a choice.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground. The big question now is, what does this actually mean for you and your team on a practical, day-to-day basis? Let's boil it all down into a straightforward action plan.
So here are the big takeaways, the key shifts you need to make. First, get really disciplined about your language and your documentation. Always separate the entities process from your own materiality assessment. Second, that bifurcated approach, that needs to become the backbone of your whole methodology. You determine for quantitative and you consider for qualitative. Third, if double materiality is on the table because of the framework, you've got to build both financial and impact perspectives into your work. And finally, and this is always critical, document everything. Really spell out the why behind your materiality judgments.
At the end of the day, what ISA 5000 gives us is a really solid framework for this new world of assurance. It gives us the structure, the right words to use, and a clear methodology. But, and this is the most important part, it doesn't give us all the answers. It still comes down to you. The final call in this incredibly complex landscape is still going to be what it's always been, your professional judgment. It just has to be informed, well-documented, and of course, defensible.